He's here to talk about life, death, transcendence, and without any further ado, I will turn it over to Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I would like to start I'll call it a session today. We'll do a little meditation. I'm going to put up a slide here. It's very simple to do. We'll be taking a long, deep breath with calm, long, deep breath with clear. Inhale, present moment. Exhale, wonderful moment. Okay, you don't have to read it. I will say it so you can just listen. Close your eyes if you like. It's best to have your feet flat on the floor. This is, of course, to ground ourselves and kind of bring all the energy as one, that we're all doing this together. Okay, we'll begin with a long, deep inhale. Calm. Long and deep. Exhale, clear. Long inhale. Present moment. Long exhale, wonderful moment. I put up here dying, death, fear, healing, liminal states. This is quite a lofty title here, and it's quite a bit to go through, but maybe if we can work together and be together with this, we can explore and look at some new things. I'm going to present some things that I have personally experienced. I would like you, at least I ask your permission, that you kind of follow through with this. You can hold up on your judgments whether or not this fits your state of reality or not. Okay? We are all, in our own individual ways, grand ways, small ways, looking for the meaning of life and also what is reality. And some of you, I'm sure, believe that you know what reality is, and I'm also sure that tomorrow your idea of reality is going to change. So let's continue. Let's start out with this question. By the way, I know that some of you may be in the back, you can't see it. If you'd like, just bring your chair, just come up in the front here, because for some of you it's kind of far away. But I'll read it anyway. It says, how many times have you been a direct witness to human birth? So please raise your hand. Okay, almost everybody. Okay? To someone's death. Okay, a little, maybe about half here. So as I mentioned, instead of showing you a lot of research, which there's so much out there about near-death experiences, clinical deaths, what happens when you die, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to present you with some things that have happened to me, so please stay with me and let's see what happens. When I just become 4 years old. This is in upstate New York. It was a cold winter night. I was lying in my bed. I can remember looking at the bedroom window, and I had my little giraffe sitting there on the windowsill, and it was must have been a full moon. The moon was shining through the window, creating this crystalline pattern, and I flew out of my body. I was out into the universe, traveling around. It was I'm just a little kid. I was in this state of awe. It was, I would call it terrifying brilliance. It was a combination of this experiencing this awesome state, but also totally terrified. And I traveled through these planetary systems, star systems, and again, I just turned 4 years old. And I got really scared. I came back into my body. I started going down the stairs. I knew my parents were watching TV. And I stopped in the middle of the stairs and said, oh, they can't help me with this. And on top of that, I had no words to explain it. This experience happened to me many times as a child. And I didn't know how to explain it. I did not have the vocabulary. I want to jump ahead here. Jump ahead to, I'm 29 years old, and I want to set this up for you so you can kind of get an idea of what was going on. 29 years old, I was working at Princeton University. I was designing energy systems. It was mainly for research, for other researchers. And I was also directing a yoga center. I was one of the founders of a holistic health center in Princeton, and I was running a vegetarian restaurant. And on top of that, I was teaching on the other side of the campus in this big tower. I was teaching this accredited course on how yoga, meditation, and sacred movement affects consciousness. I was, say the least, I was pretty busy. I was getting up 4 o'clock in the morning every day, and I'd go to bed maybe 11, 12 o'clock every night. And I needed a break. So I went with some, I'll call it spiritual travelers. We went over to India, into the Himalaya mountains, to this place called Hemkunt. It's 16,000 feet up. And we did our journey. So we went to, again, I'm 29, we went to JFK Airport, got on Pan Am, you remember Pan Am? Flew over to Bombay, then Bombay, now Mumbai of course. Bombay at the time, and still is this huge, sprawling city of the most intoxicating smells and vile smells, the combination of both. Music that will make your mind soar into the heavens, and also this hip-hop music, kind of a combination of both. The riches, people were so rich there, walking alongside and living alongside the most wretched poverty you could ever imagine, and silks and rags everywhere. That was Bombay. We then flew over to New Delhi, up to, we went to Rishikesh. Rishikesh is in Uttarakhand, and kind of people call it the yoga center of the world. This is also where the Beatles, they made most of the music for the White Album. Mike Love of the Beach Boys, he recorded and meditated there, and it goes on and on and on. We went from there to Srinagar. This is at the foothills of the Himalayas. Then we started our journey up into Hemkunt. By this time, we'd been traveling for a couple of weeks. I started getting severely ill. I had the most horrible stomach cramps. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even drink water. But I was determined to go to Hemkunt. Hemkunt was, as the legend said, this man named, this yogi, Rishi Dashdaman, had been living there for several hundred years. And I wanted to find this guy. At least I wanted to find where he lived. So we started up the journey, and finally we got to the top. This was absolutely spectacular, being up 16,000 feet in the Himalayas. And we arrived at this place, Hemkunt. You dive into this glacier lake. That's the ritual. It's pretty cold. And you do your meditation, and then we headed on eventually, after staying there for quite a while, and we headed on back down. At this time, I was so sick, I could hardly move, but finally made it down to the base camp at 10,000 feet, and took a trip over to these hot springs, and saw, of all people, saw Ram Dass there, and then headed back down, and finally made our way back to this temple, this Golden Temple where we were staying. I was at the Golden Temple. I had not eaten food in several days. The last time I drank water was 3 to 4 days before that. If I drank water, it would just, everything would come up. And at the Golden Temple, there's this marble walkway called the Pakarma. And I was walking around it, could hardly move, but there's this divine music playing, and I felt this is where I might be dying. I didn't want to die. I was only 29 years old, but I felt this was coming. And the Indian people around me, they started coming up to me and touching my body, touching my feet and trying to kiss my hand. I kept trying to push them away and say, no, don't. And they mistakenly thought I was some kind of holy person. So I tried to push them away, and all these hands were on me, and I collapsed onto the marble pakarma. I can remember a few of the Indian men picking me up, and they carried me up to the guest room, and then they left. And I was on this bed, and I started going out of the body. And I would hover above the body, then go back in, then hover above it again, and go back. This happened many times. And I started going through all this stuff of, I haven't finished my life. I have so many regrets, and I just haven't completed what I needed to complete. But I kept going out, then all of a sudden it was like an explosion, and I was out into this space. I'll have to call it this valley of, it was a valley of death. And when I use that term, I'm talking about darkness. Like, you have never seen darkness. This was an emotional darkness, and it was beyond a visual darkness. It was so intense. And I went back to the first second of my life, coming into this world. And I started reliving all of the, I would call it, unhealthy, unbecoming, negative things in my, every single thing. And this could be something as small as, I don't like his hat. It was on that level. And I started reliving every single negative thing that I ever experienced. And it lasted for eternity. Yeah, I know, logically, that doesn't make any sense. It was eternity. I was in this vibration, I'll call it, using a physics term, it was a wave function. It was, I was in this vibration of negativity for eternity. And that is the only thing that existed. Just this one, I'm talking about just one thought form. Not all the endless thought forms I had. Just one thought form, and it was just a vibration of negativity that was not only around me, it was me. That's what it was. And I use the word painful. I cannot describe, there are no words for this. It would make, a fraction of this would make my body explode. And then I would go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Beyond anything you could ever imagine. Then, all of a sudden, this vibration, this, I'll call it a harmonic vibration, started coming in. And I started reliving every single thought form that I had in my life that was of a positive, loving, compassionate, caring feeling. And it was, again, to the infinite, endless degree, ecstasy. Way beyond anything you could ever imagine. And it would be one after the next, after the next. And I went through this entire spectrum of my life up to that moment. Beyond the beyond. Now, when this was happening, one thing that was so extraordinary was that I saw all of my friends, not only all of my friends from my childhood, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of people that long gone out of my memory. I'd totally forgotten about them. They're just I didn't even know they existed anymore. They're just, they had been vanished from my memory. All of a sudden, here they are. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these people. Not only that, I had been teaching these seminars all over the place, all over the country, you know, in different countries. And all of a sudden, thousands and thousands of these people that I had met, here they are, who were not in my conscious memory. They had been, you know, they disappeared. They were just gone. And here they are. That was totally astounding that all these people could come into my life again. The next thing that happened that was pretty tough was I started seeing what my potential was, and that I had not been using my potential of what I've come to this earth to do at all, and just maybe a tiny, tiny fraction of it. That was pretty difficult to look at. The next thing that really surprised me was this idea of faith. Now, okay, I've been doing, you know, I've been brought up as a Christian. I studied Sufis, and you know, it goes on and on and on, all this stuff. But this idea of faith was not really part of my life. I didn't relate to it. I just thought, well, that's kind of a Christian thing, you know, it kind of belongs in that realm over there. But I saw how powerful faith is. That if one really, really has faith in the bountifulness and the joy of life, really you can do anything. I'll have to admit, though I saw this, I can't say I totally embraced that at this moment. It seems like something that's so far beyond that a regular human like myself could truly grasp. I also saw, that was quite painful, how much of my life I had been wasting on negative, frivolous, life energy depleting thoughts. That was quite revealing. And what came out of that was I became quite consumed with this idea of what is time and how time affects me and how I am using my time. So much that even after all these years since this happened, I still endlessly think about this very mysterious concept of time. It consumes me in certain ways. I was then taken on, I'll call it the journey through the cosmos, where I saw these star formations and galaxy clusters and these giant galaxy systems that were collapsing and reforming again, and the colors, or the show, the spectacle, this phantasmagoria was just absolutely beyond imagination to see this. And then I knew I had to go back. I had to get back somehow. I then went back into my body. I opened up my eyes. Now, I have to remember, when I went out, there's no one in the room. I opened up my eyes, and there was an IV in my arm. And I looked around, and the room was full of people. And there was an Indian doctor. He was looking down at me. He said, "Oh, welcome back. You have died, and you've come back again." I said, "Oh," and people in the room started clapping, and I said, "Wow." I said, "What day is this?" And I heard someone say, "Oh, it's Wednesday morning." I said, "Okay. Well, when am I supposed to go back to America?" And so I heard someone laughing and said, "You're not going back. You're going to be here for at least a month to recover from this." And I said, "Well, when am I supposed to go back?" And they said, "Friday morning." Friday morning, 2 o'clock, I gathered my things, took a rickshaw to Amritsar Airport, flew to New Delhi, Delhi to Bombay, JFK, got down on Mother Earth, kissed Mother America, went to a specialist, an internist, and who did all these tests on me and said, you are in perfect condition, perfect health. I'd lost a lot of weight, but I was feeling good. So that was my Hemkunside journey. I'm going to explain more about that. By the way, as I'm going along, you know, if anyone wants to talk or, you know, has a question or comment, you know, please.
I think it would be better to have the lights on so that we could see his face and the video could see his face. What do you think? Or
Yeah, go ahead. Let's give it a try. Well, we'll see what happens.
we're going to turn it back off and on, whatever.
Yeah, good idea. Well, I got a little phantasmagoria slide here. We don't have time. I wanted to talk about it, but I decided recently we won't talk about multiverses. Oh, unless you want to for a second.
Yes, yes, what's that? Please.
I had about 3 years after this experience, I was working in my office at Princeton, and I wasn't feeling good. And I said, "Oh, I got to go home." Left my office, went over the other side of the campus, went into my place, my apartment, laid down, and my heart started going bam, 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 bam. I flew out of my body, and I was in this, there a long line of, I'll call it beings, people, whatever. We're in a line. So I made my place in the line, and there were like these flashes, boom, boom, and someone was, I'll say someone. There was a presence next to me. I said, "What is this? What is this?" And they said, "Oh, those are beings that have just died in this body, and they've left." It was like, pew, pew. And I saw that I was in the line, and I panicked, like totally panicked. No, no, no! And bam! I went back into my body again. My heart was going, whoa. And I've had so many experiences like that, and that was connected with another experience where, when I was out, and I was asking this same, I'll call it presence, and there's like a light, like a sphere of light, and I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Oh, that's where space and time is." I said, "Okay." I didn't know anything about multiverses. You know, this is all these theories on multiverses now.
Could you explain what multiverse
A multiverse, there's this idea that we are in this our cosmos, our universe is one, but there are many others that we are kind of, I'll use the word enveloped, if I may. That really doesn't make sense in physics sense. But we are enveloped in our own universe, but there are many other universes. That's the so-called multiverse. People are trying, I won't get into this because it's really quite complicated. Let's see, I got this quote here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe, yeah. Thank you, Barbara. We are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. In psychology, to define consciousness as the aspect of cognition and the capacity for reflective thinking. Okay, whatever that means. Let's look at it from a different perspective. I lived in Japan for 28 years. And I had a teacher there, I may be mentioning him in a moment. And I was studying what's called Soto Zen. Zen meditation. And Soto Zen came to Japan around the year 1600 by this teacher. His name was Dogen Zenji. And there are basically two forms of Zen. There's Soto Zen, which I study, and then there's Rinzai. It's not important to get into that now, how they differ. But Zogen, who started Soto Zen, he said that all is sentient being. And that even the trees, the flowers, the planets, all are sentient. All is what he also called mind. This is kind of hard to translate over. But he said everything is sentient. And the Dalai Lama also said that sentience is everywhere at varying levels, and that humans should have compassion for all sentient beings. Okay, this is another aspect of attempting to define what consciousness is. Now there's an emerging field of thought and philosophy, and also in physics. It's called non-emergentism. What does that mean? That it basically means emergent properties do not exist. Science basically says, for most of science, that you have matter, and from matter, in more complex energy systems, consciousness arises. Okay, that's the biological perspective. But this other perspective is that matter arises from consciousness. Okay, and that's called the non-emergentism aspect of it. That consciousness is a universal property of all matter. Now I wrote on the board here of the death journey, Bardo Tholdo. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Most of you? Yeah, okay. Tibetan Book of the Dead was first translated into English by Evan Wentz back in the 1960s. It's kind of sort of okay translation. Robert Thurman translated another version of it. Sogyal Rinpoche translated, which is considered by many maybe the best translation. Okay, so it's also called Bardo Tholdo. The Bardo Thosgro is another way of pronouncing it. What is this all about? Bardo means, yeah, you can turn that, thank you. Bardo means in-between state, also called the liminal state. Bardo is often referred to in Tibetan Buddhism as that liminal state between birth and death. Now, Bardo also means many other things too. Again, we're talking about intermediate state. It also refers to, like, we are in a Bardo now. We are between the past and the future. So this present, the ever-present present, that is where life takes place. Nothing else really exists other than the present. So we are in the Bardo, we are in the in-between state, which also means that in this present moment is also where liberation can take place. This other word, Thodo, the second part of it, that means the extinction of illusion. Okay. Bardo Thodo. The Bardo Thodo was, as they say, composed by Padmasambhava back around in the 1700s, but they call it revealed by Karma Lingpa, this Tibetan yogi master.
Joseph,
Yes.
the illusion, extinction of illusion, does that mean the illusion of our presence when we transition? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean,
Is that what they mean, do you think?
this is referring to, which we're going to try to explore a little bit more, what is reality? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a big topic. Okay, so what is this all about, the Tibetan Book of the Dead? The Tibetan Buddhists, in my opinion, they study death more than any other culture or religion on this planet. This is their main focus, attempting to understand what death is all about. And many of their practices, the yogis are trained to go into what we would call the near-death experience. And to come back and report what's happening. At the time of death, let's see here, I think I've got a little phrase here. Yes, I do here. At the time of death, a Tibetan Buddhist monk would read to the person who has just died. They would start out reading this. Again, the person lying there is dead. But someone would be whispering into his or her ear. Remember the clear light, the pure white light from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns. The original nature of your own mind, the natural state of the universe unmanifest. Let go into the clear light. Trust it. Merge with it. It is your own true nature. It is home. Okay? That's the beginning of the Bardo photo. And this could go on for several days. That someone is next to the dying person reading from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Okay? So the first Bardo, as it is explained in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the light is so bright, the illumination is so intense that for almost everybody it's too much. They can't hold the light. It's too much. They then drop down into the next Bardo. And in the next Bardo, the light is also, for most people, much too much, and people will start experiencing these deities of these horrifying, terrifying deities, but also very loving, compassionate deities. They will experience both. But the person is told, while they're experiencing these deities of all kinds, they're also being told, this is the manifestation of your mind. Okay? Now, if the person can't handle that, they drop down to the next Bardo, until finally they will reincarnate. Okay? That's a Tibetan Book of the Dead. I put this up here. It's indirectly connected with this question dealing with extinction of illusion. Michelangelo said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." With this idea that we're always trying to, find out what is reality and what is illusion. What is leading us astray. I put this up here, Jizo. Anyone ever hear of Jizo? Mm-hmm. All right, a few people. I'm good. Over in Japan, you see these little statues of a Jizo that look like this. What is Jizo? In most forms, not all forms, most forms of Buddhism, they talk about 6 levels. And please don't get caught up in, there's 6 levels. This is just kind of putting things in proportion, kind of in comparison, kind of a thing. So these 6 levels are, you have the hell state, and then you have the hungry ghost. Hungry ghosts are depicted as a tiny head with a great big mouth and a belly. And the hungry ghost is never satisfied. Doesn't matter how much pleasure, how much food, whatever, is never satisfied. Then you move up to animal level, and you move up to the demigods. These are beings, souls that had a lot of power and totally abused it. We don't know anyone like that, do we? Then we move up to the next level, that's we humans. And we move up to the next level, kind of the deities of sorts who still have karma to work out, okay? And the idea of a Jizo is is someone who can go in and out of all the realms freely. Go into hell and say, "Hey Frank, how you doing? Sally, nice seeing you today." Kind of hold their hand and try to guide them out of these levels, okay? As far as I'm concerned, people involved like in hospitals, especially like nurses, people who are doing hospice work, they're like Jesus. And I'm telling you a story because you'll see in a moment. This was my teacher over in Japan. I had the great fortune of being introduced to him by my teacher, Shohaku, who is now a Roshi in Indiana. Uchiyama Roshi was in the main lineage all the way back to Dogen from the year 1600 that I talked about earlier. And I met with him, and he said to me, he used to be the abbot of Antai-ji. This is a big temple outside of Kyoto. And he was now living in a hermitage with his wife. And he said to me, you know, "Please come and visit me again." And I was like astonished by this because he wasn't taking students. And he would periodically write me a letter and say, "Come and visit." And I would cancel my university classes where I was teaching and rush up to Kyoto and spend the day with him. I did this several times, and it was I feel so blessed and honored that I could do this. So, the last time I saw him, I spent the day with him, and I went back to my home, and then came over to the States. In fact, I was at, maybe some of you know Joan Halifax, that's her Upaya place, dealing with death and dying. And I heard, while I was there, that Uchiyama Roshi had died. I said, "No, he must be a different person. I was just with him." He was Japanese word is genki, meaning like full of energy and life. I said, "No, he was looking good." And I said, No, he died. I said, "No, how can that be?" And I went back to Japan, and I went to see his wife Keiko, and he had died. And I said, "Keiko, what happened?" She said, "Well, this was just like a week ago." He said, "Well, we did what we usually do. We had lunch together. We took a walk around the Hermitage for about an hour, went all the way around, and we came to the front of our house, and Jim Roshi kneeled down and started praying to Jizo, we just saw. And I said to him, "What are you doing? I've never seen you pray to Jizo. What's going on?" And he said, "Come." And they sat down, and he started talking to her about, you must deepen your practice now. Do not wait. Do not wait. Why is he saying this to me now? I live with him. I hear this every day. Why is he saying this so strongly to me now? And so he continued on and on. And then he got up, and she's watching him. He got up, he walks into the bathroom, and he puts on this very formal kimono. What's he doing? He just finished washing his body. Brush his teeth. She's still watching him. He comes out, he goes into the room, lies down in this tatami mat, lies down, "Keiko! Keiko!" And she rushes over to him. He looks up at her, and he dies. Now, when I saw him just before I came over to this visit to the States, he was talking about his death poems, and he was reading some of his death poems to me. And he would talk. He would say, I've been to the edge, and I've looked over on the other side, and I am just a reporter, reporting back what I've seen." I said, "Okay." So all this started making sense while he was reading these death poems to me. Anyway, that was Ucha Amoroshi. Many stories to tell about him, but I will continue. Let's see, I've got here the only spiritual practice that can help you only spiritual practice can help you at the time of death. This is a meditation. We're not going to do this right now, but your loved ones, time of death cannot help. Oh, are there? Your possessions and enjoyments cannot help. Your own body cannot help. Nothing can help except your own spiritual practice. I was going to show you a pattern in nature, but I just discovered you've got to be hooked up to the Wi-Fi here, and you can't do that. So let's move on here. My relationship, attempting to understand this big word, reality. What is reality? Certainly there are things around us that you can say are real, and it has to do with patterns, and also has to do with this sense of a pulsation that goes on in the universe, including ourselves. There's a pulsation of energy force. There's a pulsation in the energy field that's around us, of getting bigger, getting smaller, getting bigger, and getting smaller. But certainly in the cosmos, certainly on planet Earth, there are patterns. Okay, let's see here. Barbara? Okay. Oh, this is probably really hard to see. This one up here, this is a brain cell. This is the universe over here. This is a birth of a cell. This is death of a star. This is the eye. This is a nebula. Nebula is basically gas and various materials in the cosmos over many, many, many light years in space. But these patterns, these repetitive patterns, are throughout the cosmos on every level, from on the grandest scale down to the most minute scale. I've got over here. This is a peacock. This is a leaf. This is the Grand Canyon. As you can see, as you know, patterns repeat. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. So there's these two basic things that are happening in the cosmos on all levels, everywhere. This pulsation and also patterns. Okay, let's move on here. All of life's rhythm and patterns. When conditions, this is a very Buddhist idea. When conditions are right, things manifest. I'm moving right along here. Again, someone had a question, I think.
Yeah, going back to the moment that you were lying down on a bed with
Yes.
the IV in your arm.
Yes.
So, do you remember what was the driving factor that actually pulled you back from that state? Because it's a difficult question. It was a long time ago, and was it an emotional, or was it rational, or was it a?
Yeah, it was. Yes. What pulled me back?
Yes.
I think what pulled me back was when I was shown of things that I had the potential of doing in life, that I needed to come back and do that. That was maybe the impetus that made me come back. By the way, in regard to your question, kind of offshoot of it, I want to call it a presence. There wasn't a form like, oh, there's some person with a long beard or something. It wasn't like that. There was a presence that was, I want to say, beside me, and if I could give it a place, I will say to my right. But that's not quite accurate, because the presence was also inside of me, and what I was seeing, it wasn't like I was seeing, okay, we're looking at this, over here. It wasn't like that. It was like there were visuals, yes, there were visuals taking place, and there were sights and sounds, but it wasn't separate from me. I was in it. I was part of the visuals, part of the sounds. In the sound, especially in the latter half, this cosmic sound was the most ecstatic vibration you could ever imagine. And I was immersed in it. It wasn't separate from me. It wasn't like it was coming at me. I was in it. It was part of. I was part of that. So there was a sense of, and I'm using this word self, and self isn't even accurate. It was like there is an aspect of whatever it is that I am that was immersed in this enormous field of energy, and we're all kind of doing this together. So this presence that was teaching me, and it wasn't like the presence was speaking in English or French or Japanese or something. This presence was communicating to me, to my consciousness. I think that's the best I could do to explain that. Okay, we're doing a jump here to deathbed vision. I'm trying to keep on track here for everybody. Deathbed visions. Okay, some of you know I also do hospice work, and I've worked with quite a few people in Japan and over here. People near death. Now, it wasn't really until maybe 10 years ago that deathbed visions were starting to become a reality for some medical people. What is a deathbed vision? Deathbed vision is something that someone who's in the end stages of life, who experience, I'll call it beings that appear in the room or out of the room, or these altered states of experience, and sometimes they happen in dreams. So one of the first people to do some research was this Dr. Christopher Kerr, and he's a hospice physician, and I'll read this for those way in the back. Dr. Christopher Kerr and hospice team, they did 1,400 interviews following patients that were near their death. More than 80% reported at least one deathbed vision or dream of a visitor. So what did they see? 72% of these people, they saw the deceased. 59% preparing to go, meaning maybe someone said, okay, Frank, we're waiting for you. Come, it's time. The living, meaning friends that they know, other meaningful experiences. Okay, that's with 1,400 interviews. David Kessler, he's written a couple of really fine books. He's got extensive experience working with the dying. In his research, he found that they're in basic categories. Visions of loved ones who have already died, taking a trip, bus, plane, across the river, crowded room, not all the people are known by the person. I was working with a woman in her 80s, and she asked me on several occasions, she said, can you do me a favor? I said, well, if I can, I'll try. She said, well, there's a stream by my house. Okay, this is an assisted living home. Okay, and she's been there for quite a while. There's a stream, and there's some boulders in the stream. Can you remove those boulders for me? I said, oh, well, you know, I'll take a look at it, but I think I'm going to need your help in removing the boulders. I said, okay. This theme of the stream, many cultures have, is certainly a big one in Japan. You know, a stream that you have to cross to get to the other side. You see this in tea ceremony. Often in tea ceremony there'll be a little bridge, you know, crossing over. You can't get to the other side. You know, the crossover. Anyone know anyone who's had these deathbed visions? Yeah. At first, the medical profession generally considered this as a delusion or hallucinations, which of course, any of you who have worked with those who are dying, because of the medicine, because of a variety of other things, will have hallucinations and delusions. But the difference is the hallucinations and delusions tend to be incoherent and often forgotten shortly after the person says them. Whereas a deathbed vision tends to be very organized and remembered, strongly, emotionally remembered by the person who had it. So it's kind of a quite different experience the person has.
Joseph, do they find in their research, do you know, if people who have a more spiritual program, or whatever you might call it, spiritual life, are more likely to have these experiences?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
In fact, in regard to that, those who have worked with the dying find that often a person who's so strong in their religious belief, it goes out the window. That's not always the case. Some people, you know, right to the very last moment, they adhere strongly to their belief. But often people, they just chuck out with the belief system that they held so dearly to all their life. It's quite common. I only put that, well, Dalai Lama. This place right here is Todaiji. I put in Dalai Lama because he often talks about these liminal states and such. I had the great good fortune of meeting the Dalai Lama over in Nara, Japan. This is the ancient spiritual capital of Japan. This is Todaiji on the left. You can't quite see it here, but maybe you get the idea. It's the oldest, biggest wooden structure in the world. It was built somewhere around 600, year 600. It's an enormous, enormous place. It's got a big Buddha in it that's several stories high. I had heard in Japan they don't advertise on TV or the radio or anything if the Dalai Lama is coming. Excuse me. It's for political reasons. China puts a lot of pressure, you know, on the government, so the Japanese government doesn't advertise it. So it's word of mouth, and word of mouth spreads quickly. I had heard, I got a message early this one morning, Dalai Lama is going to be in Nara, so I canceled my classes and went over to Nara as soon as I could, and there was this crowd, thousands of people, like you see right in the middle, that this is on that day. These are photos I took. Thousands of people, and the Dalai Lama, he's so far away, and he's got his bodyguards around him, and the Japanese bodyguards, and he's walking along. Todaiji's over here, and he's walking along, and I'm way over there, and all of a sudden the Dalai Lama stops, and he does a 90-degree turn, and he starts kind of heading in my direction. I go, wow, this is great. I got my camera out, I'm taking all these photos, and in the crowd, this big mass of people, they start moving toward me. I said, wow, he's getting closer. And I'm flashing away in my camera, and closer and closer and closer. And he comes all the way over and stops in front of me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going, wow, what is going on here? And he takes my hand, this incredible energy coming out of his hand. He takes my hand, and he's got this extraordinary smile, always, and he's holding my hand, he starts asking me about my life. And what's going on inside of my mind is, wow, why is he doing this, stopping to talk to me? He's carrying this huge burden of the Tibetan people on his shoulders. He's like, why is he stopping here? And so we carry on this conversation, then he laughs again, this mirthful laugh of his, and he turns around and continues on his way. I said, wow. So I feel blessed by that. We move on here. Skip over here. Oh, let's go to. This is and not so far from where I lived is this place called Koyasan. Let's see what's about here. Oh, okay. This is the mystical, the highly mystical form of Buddhism, and not all Buddhism is so mystical. It's called Shingon, formed by Kukai in 774. It's up in the mountains. Oops. There's 120 temples there. You can go and stay overnight, eat the kaiseki ryori. This is the traditional Japanese monk food. Stay in the temples, meditate with them. 3,500 monks today, but there used to be, Edo, I wrote during Edo. Edo is from 1600 to about 1865 when Japan was closed off to the rest of the world. There used to be 2,000 temples there, if you can imagine. But now, there's 3,500 monks still living there. But it's an extraordinary place. It's just being there. You don't have to have any kind of religious beliefs or believe in Buddhism. You're transported just being in this mountain environment with all these mystical type of monks living there. We're going through all these extraordinary states of consciousness, and I'm sharing with you these personal things I've gone through. Kudahashi Sensei, who is she? Before I moved to Japan, I was living in Seattle, and we had a group of people. There was 3 psychologists, a social worker, artist, and myself, and we would meet maybe 3-4 times a week for a year. We were doing, kind of processing stuff, trying to discover reality, and we got a phone call. This woman, Kudahashi Sensei from Japan, I'd never heard of her, no idea who she was, wanted to come over to meet me and join our group. So what is this? So a friend of mine who was Japanese, I said, who is this person? So, I know Kudahashi Sensei. I said, okay. So she came over and spent a week with us, and she did these seminars. She called it Reikan, which is basically having people move in this motion, and if you've got something caught in your body, like you're having trouble breathing, you start doing a motion, as an example. You do a motion, open up your breathing while you're moving backwards, okay? And so you got all these people, it's this big room, and someone's got a sore over here, or their back hurts, and you're going through these motions that kind of loosen things up, and we're all spinning around going backwards. I'll tell you, it put everybody into an extraordinary altered state. Then we'd all sit down, and Kudahashi Sensei, she was short, she was a Japanese shaman, and she'd go around to each person, and she'd start talking to this person, and she had 2 assistants with her, and the 2 assistants would start acting out that person's life, and like a comedy. And these are like things like nobody knew about each person. These were like secrets, and this, again, comical theater, the assistants would be acting out the person's life, and it was so funny. It was painful and funny. She's just an extraordinary person. Okay, so she did that for a week, went back to Japan. Shortly after I moved to Japan, and I just moved to Tokyo. Okay, I'm in my apartment, and I had just been at this hot springs resort because I was with some other people. We had a startup company in Tokyo. This was a presentation skills company. And I was doing a meditation, I needed $5,000 more, okay, to get this operation going. So I'm up there meditating, how can I do this? So I come back, so now it's Monday morning, I still need $5,000. So 6 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call. Who's on the line but Kurohashi Sensei? She said, can you come over to the Hilton? I said, yeah, sure. Can you meet me there at 7 o'clock? I said, sure. So immediately got my things together and went over there. And she was with 2 students. They had driven all the way from Osaka all night long. It's about an 8-hour drive. And she had just arrived in Tokyo. So, okay, so we're talking over breakfast at the Hilton, eating whatever we're eating. And so 1 hour goes by, and she says, I've got to go back, I've got another line. That's what she called it. I've got another line. So she got up, started going up, and she just had some envelope or piece of paper, I don't know what it was. And she said, oh, can you take this? And I said, sure. Put it in my pocket. And she left. She drove all the way back down to Osaka. Okay? So I went back to my apartment and kind of getting things ready, and I opened up $5,000. $5,000. And this happened more than once on several occasions. Should I give you another example?
Sure.
Okay, a few months went by. I later moved, I had moved to Osaka, and I was saying, do I need a car? You know, because the roads are tight in Japan, and so I'm thinking, yeah, I guess I need a car. Phone call, Kurohashi Sensei, can you meet me in Kyoto? Yeah, sure. Go to Kyoto. We're walking around, and so a friend, one of her students, was in this Honda auto dealer place, and so I'm talking to him, and we're walking around, the dealership, and so we're ready to leave, and she says, "Oh, here," and she got these keys. Said, "That car is yours." I said, "What?" So she had paid for the car and paid for a year of insurance. Okay. I can give you many more of these examples, but true stories. I got the tie up here because she says, that's what she said. She said she initially came to Seattle to meet me because I was, a few lifetimes ago, one of her main students, and the tie represents the connection. I said, okay. Okay, I'll take the tie. Nice tie. That's why I got that tie up. Pointing the bow. Again, we're going to extraordinary states of consciousness. Anyone ever hear of this with the Aborigines in Australia? Mm-hmm. Pointing the bow. And this is I'll explain this briefly. This is basically if someone in the group, I'll call it a tribe, someone in the group has misbehaved, a serious, I'll call it a crime, to the extent that the person must die. I mean, we're talking about a serious crime. That the elders of the community get out their kundera, which is basically the femur bone of a human or a kangaroo. And if this is a person over here, they point the kundera at the person, and within a few days that person is dead. This has been extensively studied by Western medical doctors, and supposedly the only way you can survive is if you convince this person that, oh, we have stronger magic, then possibly the person will not die. But, okay, pointing to the bone. Spontaneous healing, we won't get in, there's a lot to be said about this, we won't get into this right now. I want to move to Okinawa. I've been in Okinawa many times. There's these shamans called yutas, also called kaminchu. And the shamans are always women. And this is the same also in Hokkaido, in the northern island. The shamans are also men. Are also women, and they get the stories, the men get the stories from the women. So these they're called kamidadis, and they're very powerful. And so out of my own interest, I would meet some of these shamans. There was one, she was quite funny, and I was with my wife, and at the time, my wife and I, we wanted to have a child. And we tried, went through all the medical stuff, and basically said, no, it's not going to happen. We tried and tried and tried, spent enormous amounts of money, the medical procedure, not going to happen. So anyway, this one shaman that we met, so we sat in front of her, and she started laughing and said, oh, she's so cute. Oh, that little girl is so cute. So what are you talking about? Oh, she's so cute. She's coming soon. So I'm sorry, no, it's just not going to happen. Oh, there she is. She's so sweet. I said, okay. So we didn't pay much attention to that, but a couple months later, my wife got pregnant. And we have a wonderful, beautiful, dear young daughter. But there's a lot of these kamidadi in Okinawa. I'll call it religion, is much different than Buddhism. It's kind of their own thing. They believe, as they do throughout most of Japan, that there's like a spirit, they call it a kami, there's a spirit in everything. Oh, well, I'm going to have to explain to you what this is. Salvador Dali and you. This has to do with, there's a lot of people, especially in AI, they're trying to develop immortality through, downloading your consciousness and all that kind of stuff. Well, where it's heading, at least in that direction, you can go to St. Petersburg in Florida to this museum. I wish I could show it, but we can't connect to the, unfortunately, well, let me try it one more time. You can go into this one room in this museum in St. Petersburg, in Florida, and you can talk to Salvador Dali. Now, Salvador Dali died 20 years ago, but who you were talking to looks like Salvador Dali. Looks like him, moves like him, talks like him. It's Salvador Dali. And it's all through AI, artificial intelligence. You can't tell the difference. You can ask him questions, he answers, he'll give you these very profound philosophical questions about life. And it looks like you're talking to Salvador Dali. It's kind of looks like a realistic hologram. But this is something that is going to be happening for many people in the fairly near future. When they die, people are going to try to preserve things that they've said, how they look, how they talk. And it's kind of a direction that it's going in. No. There it goes. This I like to show in my seminars. Those who died yesterday had plans for this morning. Those who died this morning had plans for tonight. Don't take life for granted. In the blink of an eye, everything can change. So forgive often and love with a full heart. You never know when you may not have that chance again. All doubt, despair, and fear become magnificent. Insignificant, thank you. Once the intention of life becomes love. I want to open this up to questions and answers and anything in that. Yes.
I was curious about any information available from people who were in the stages of transition who were in dementia, either Alzheimer's or some other form. If there's any information you can offer.
When you say information, the people who are going through dementia.
Maybe there's some studies, maybe there's some work, maybe there's something that has been studied.
You mean,
I have some experiences, and I just was curious.
You mean in regard to
what those people may be experiencing, and have there been any studies, is there any information available that's been conducted scientifically or in some kind of research that gives us any insight?
there's certainly a lot of research on this, but I'll answer that from my perspective.
Okay.
When I had that experience over in India in the Himalaya mountains, it became very clear to me that my awareness, my state of consciousness was very crisp and clear. I was also very aware that there was a body, that it was linked to a physical body, this body, but this body was not working. I couldn't make the brain function. I couldn't make my body move. Forget about putting words together. You know, as we know, language is very complex. You know, you've got your subject and your verb and your object and, you know, syntax and all this stuff. It's a very complex, you know,
System.
yeah, system, ordeal to put together, but the body wouldn't work. I couldn't. The clarity was there, but forget about the body. And from my personal experience, I relate to that with people like with dementia. That there's someone there, that there's a clarity there, but you know, speaking, making sentences, thoughts, memories, it's just not working. It's not, the system's not working anymore. Yes.
In terms of when you're dying and all you have is your consciousness that you've been cultivating, is there are so many different paths, so many different practices. So I guess the two questions are, is there an optimal path for me to practice in order to strengthen my consciousness when I go through the experience of the bardos?
Well, to answer this, is there a good path, a strong path, one that really helps a lot? I became quite clear, especially the India experience. There's so many paths up the mountain. I had been wearing, you know, going up the mountain, I was wearing religious garb, you know, and it became very clear to me, wear it if you want to wear it, but it has nothing to do with reality. Has nothing. Does the cosmos care if I'm wearing religious garb? I mean, really. There's so many ways to do it. Everyone has their own way. I asked my teacher, Jam Roshi, you know, I said, what can I do? And his answer was, become a refined person. So, you know, I thought about that a lot. I still think about it. I think about it often. What does that mean? And it means, every day it means something different for me. Yeah. Is there, yeah.
Well, so someone like, I mean, I have done various things, nothing that felt like this is my spiritual path and home. Someone else who may have had 40 years in a Tibetan Buddhist practice, I would assume will be at greater advantage when with their capacity to focus and to hold to a perspective.
I think the main thing with practice especially revolves around fear, because especially in end of life, fear comes up. It comes up, it doesn't matter who the person is, fear comes up. Some people, I think they're, in my opinion, saints. Some people are able to move through this. They're able to resolve all the regrets and unfinished business. In fact, Kathy over here, who sitting way in the back, made an extraordinary documentary, and she filmed people who are able to push through and come to a place of a very beautiful, loving space. But prior to that, people go through intense fear. So yeah, practice absolutely helps. Speaking of fear, every single one of my experiences, without fail, I experienced intense fear and intense love, both. And I realized it doesn't mean I'm able to go beyond fear, but I realized it's always a choice, whether to be in fear or whether to be in love. It doesn't mean I have control of that choice, but it's still a choice. I can be in fear or I can be in love, whatever state. And certainly spiritual practice helps. It helps tremendously. But that doesn't assure that the person isn't going to go through all this stuff, because dying it's intense. I don't care what anybody says. It's intense, it's messy, it's for many people it's painful. It's not physically painful for everybody, but for most people it is. But that can be controlled to a great extent, like a hospice or hospital setting. A lot of the pain can be controlled. But as far as the state of mind, yeah, the practice helps tremendously. The Dalai Lama talks about that. Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about it, you have to prepare yourself for these difficult times. Yes, absolutely, you need to have a spiritual practice, whatever that might be. Yeah, absolutely, you need a spiritual practice. Yes.
So you've been on the other side a lot in this out-of-body world.
Can I, before you say any more, could I say something?
Yeah.
I often get the question, what is it like on the other side? What I want to be clear about is I know absolutely nothing about reality. I know how to ride a bicycle, drive my car. I know how to prepare dinner. Sometimes pretty good. And I have a good imagination. Beyond that, I know nothing about reality.
Yeah, I was going to ask your opinion, not that you know anything. Yeah, because I don't know anything. I don't think any of us do. But I was just curious, when I look at my current journey, I'm looking in lucid dreaming, out of body, and shamanic journey, let's say. And in those realms, you're going into the dream time and you're discovering that you can mold this realm, and that, you know, there's this thing of what is our consciousness, what is thought, what is being, what is feeling. And I just wonder, do you ever get the sense that we're being dreamed, and that's why we don't have a sense of control, and why we surrender so much? It's so important to surrender so much.
When I was a child, those were dominant thoughts in my mind, that we were being dreamed. That Kabir, the 16th century, I think it was 16th century, Indian mystic, said there are worlds upon worlds beneath and beyond. And I only say this from my own experience. Yeah, there's infinite number of worlds, so-called, I use the word above, if that makes any sense. Above and below, beyond, infinite number. Why should there be like 5 or 10? Well, there's 12 layers of reality. That doesn't make sense to me. But since I was a child, I always believed that we were being dreamed, and we dreamed. We were part of a big, endless dream. But we also have a great deal of control of our dream, this dreaming state that is coming out of us. We have a great deal of control. I'm going to stand over here. I also want to say one thing about the so-called death state. Without a doubt in my mind, we can go into this liminal, called alpha state. We can go into the liminal state by various means, lucid dreaming being one. But we only go this far. You know, we can go into the so-called bardo, you know, the in-between state. We've got like this state here, and we can go into the liminal state, but like there's like what is beyond that, we don't know that. We don't know that. We can maybe understand a little bit more of what consciousness is and a little bit more of the so-called reality. But again, I've said it in different ways. I myself realized, and it became absolutely clear, that I know my understanding of reality is so infinitesimally small, it's almost non-existent. I really believe that this thing that's going on is so vast. It's like, I really know nothing. I know nothing. I love to talk about it, but I do it as an exercise of my imagination. I have no illusion that I know anything about reality, other than the very simplistic things of what I do to keep this body alive. But I know going into these liminal states, we can explore other realities of things that are happening right now, that seem to be going on in this vast cosmos. But even that, I mean, we all know that, you know, even little things like, okay, there's a clock up there, there's a piano over here. We see the piano, but yeah, but the light is coming in, the brain is doing all these incredible, outstanding things, and okay, it creates the vision of a piano, but that's not really what's happening over there, you know, with these waves of energy.
Does diet play a role in helping one into higher levels of meditation or consciousness, or staying in peace? Recognizing that the monks are vegetarian. I've been vegan in and out. I'm no longer vegan. My hair keeps falling out every time I become a vegan. So I'm like, well, anyway, I wish I was a man, but I don't like this bald hair. It looks fake right now, but because I made it look fake. But I've had profound experiences on just water.
I mean,
weeks of water, only water.
I mean, just drinking water only.
Right.
The water fast.
But of course my kidney was kicking in. But it put me in this state that was just unbelievable. I never believed I could reach that. So I would love to be there again, and especially with the shift in consciousness that is happening in society now with about animals now. Could you help?
Okay, water. Wow, that's a big topic.
Could you repeat what you said?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Diet and meditation or spiritual practices.
In water. You're talking about
Yes,
the... I'll say
yes.
water. Let me address the water, because I've done that. I tried, in my years, engineering years, I tried doing these different kind of fasts, like water fast, fruit fast, frugivore fast. What happened for me was it put me into an astounding state of clarity, but I couldn't do engineering work. You know, I had to work with all these formulas and heat flows and, you know, forget it. But I was in this really amazing, you know, state. But it didn't work for kind of dealing with living on Earth.
Right.
There's over in Japan, there's this group called Gyoja. They're these Tibetan mystic Tibetan mountain climbers. And what they do is they do before they start their practice, they have like a funeral. All the family comes and people say goodbye to them because they don't all make it. In fact, they carry these suicide things on them in case they can't carry it out. But toward the end, the very end of their practice, what they do is they sit in meditation for 8 days and nights, sitting, no food, no water, no sleep. No food, no water, no sleep. I have, on several occasions, gone without water for more than 3 days. You're hallucinating your brains out. This is very, very, very intense. 8 days, no food, no water, just meditating and no sleep. They do get up for, during the night, monks will help them. There's 2 monks watching them. And they get up and they have to walk about 100 meters to a temple. They do a prayer and they come back and they continue their sitting. Now that's quite extraordinary that they can do that. It is known that a person can live about 60 days without water. Without food, on just water. And they know this from people doing the starvation diets in prison. They first learned about that with the IRA over in Ireland, that they could go 60, 62 days. And so they know that's kind of the limit with just water. But, I think water fast is good for cleansing the body, but I don't recommend it for trying to do your daily things. I wanted to tell you one thing. People often ask me, well, what happened to you after that experience in India? I'll make this brief because there's a lot to tell. I had been practicing with all this other things in my life, various body therapies, and going through Reiki and this and that, anything that was out there I would try. I started seeing things inside of people's body. And I denied it for like a really, really, really long time. So I'm just hallucinating. This is being totally made up. And every time I'd put my hands on someone's body, I'd go into the body and see their organs and blood flow and this and that. And I had this one guy, I was at this seminar, and I put my hand on his shoulders and I started coughing. I was like gagging. I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Oh, I've been constipated for a week." I said, "Okay." This other woman that was in the seminar, I put my hand on her, and I saw there was this huge inflammation, around this part of her body. I didn't say anything. And so the teacher seminar said, "Oh, she's not coming today because she's got an inflamed kidney." It's okay. I get a call from a friend of mine, Fletcher Knabel. Some of you might know him or knew of him. Died several years ago. He was a best-selling author. And he said, "Joseph, can you come over? I'm having some problems." I said, "Okay." Fletcher lied down, put my hands on his stomach. He's got all his clothes on. I said, "Oh, don't pay any," this is what I usually say, "don't pay any attention to this. I'm just my imagination. It looks like you got some kind of something going all the way down your torso." He said, "Oh yeah, they cut me open and did exploratory heart surgery on me." I said, "Okay." I said, "But there's something else. And again, don't pay any attention to this, but it looks like you've got some kind of black ring in your anus." And so we had a good laugh, and he said, "Yeah, they put a black ring in my anus because I've got colon cancer." So I said, "Okay." So I went back to my office. A week later goes by, and this woman in architectural department, she comes over and she said, "Joseph, I'm not feeling good." I said, okay. A new time, I'll meet you out on the lawn." So I put my hand on her, and I went into the body, and again, I don't, I never tell the people. I usually don't tell them what I'm seeing. I said, oh, I think you should go get this checked out. So what I was seeing was this, I saw like a tube, and the tube was like dying. And so I get a call in my office the next day, and it's this person, and she said, oh, I'm in the hospital, they just removed my fallopian tube, I had an ectopic pregnancy. I said, okay. So this went on and on and on and on. And then it moved into, I started seeing people's thought forms. And again, I thought, I'm hallucinating, what is this? So I said, well, what are you thinking? And they would tell me, and I go, wow, it's just like what I was seeing. And I was doing, I was then asked to do this, these healing seminars in El Paso, Texas. It was out on a ranch outside of El Paso. And the people were coming in, and at this time, I couldn't even see the people. All I could see was balls of light pulsating, this energetic field pulsating like this. Person would be in a laughing, loving state, would pulsate way out. They'd be angry, and and the intense colors would come out, and so this was going on all day long. And a woman walked into the room. I couldn't see her. I had no idea who the person was. Absolutely no idea. I could hear her voice, but all I could see was this pulsating light. And okay, so I did work, whatever I did with her, and she left, and I went downstairs, and I said, where am I? And he said, what do you mean? You're in El Paso. And I said, I've got to eat some grounding food. I've got to ground myself. He said, okay, we'll go eat some hot, spicy Mexican food. I said, okay. And I said, I can't control this. I've got to, I have no control of this. And this woman, I wasn't married at the time, I kind of liked, and she was sitting next to me in a taxi, and I just touched her like this, and just just kind of brushed across her, and this flash came into my mind. Oh, she got this horrible disease in her stomach, and I said to her, "Oh," I said, "Is your stomach okay?" And she screamed. She said, "Who told you that?" And she just screamed like the loudest scream. She yelled to the taxi driver to stop. Taxi driver stopped. She ran out of the taxi. I never saw her again. And I said, "Oh, I've got to stop this. I can't control it. I can't control this." And I was like really worried about this. And it took me maybe a year to a year and a half before I could turn it off. And I refused to turn it on again. Sometimes I want to take a little peek. And I do, just a little peek. My wife will ask me sometimes. And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go into your space. I don't want to do that."
Why'd you turn it off?
I just through concentration, because to go into it, I would initially to go into it would be like, if I can use the word, like slip into it. It would be maybe a little bit like if you're playing sports and you're like everything's like in the flow, or you're playing an instrument and it's just flowing out. It's just magical. It was kind of like that. Or people do writing, you get into like this flow of the writing. I would like slip into that, and I just wouldn't go into it. I just stopped.
How did you get into it? I mean, what do you think brought it on to begin with?
I don't know. Was it that experience in the Himalayas? I don't know. Maybe not. All I know is it wasn't happening before, and it was happening after. So was there a connection? I don't know. I don't know. I know we have to wrap up in a moment here. Anyone have a question? Richard, so nice to see you.
Hi, Joseph. Do you know what I'm going to ask you?
No.
Just checking. Just checking. I think all of us are intrigued by this idea of the out-of-body experience. And I remember when I first, back in the days of maybe the 70s and all, giving away my age, but when there was the Human Potential Movement, and I went to a weekend symposium on out-of-body experiences. And I'm a kind of control freak, so I was always worried that I was going to not be able to get back in. And but they were talking about an idea that we should think of this is just our physical body, and so you're not going out of your body, you're going to a different part of your body. So that whole idea that I, whatever I is, doesn't end here at my physical body. So could you speak a little bit
I
to
think
that?
the only way I can relate to that was that sense, I kind of briefly mentioned it, that the experience in from the Himalayas was in that state, there was like both, as if it was both at the same time, as if I was watching something, but at the same time, I wasn't watching it, I was in it, that there was no separation between what I was experiencing and what so-called what I was, if I can say that. There were no boundaries, there was no, okay, here's where I end and there's something out there. I was in it. I was that. That what I was experiencing, I was. Maybe kind of sort of a roundabout maybe explains that.
A part of as opposed to a part from.
Thank you so much. It was a long talk, so thank you for staying with me.
That's wonderful. Appreciate that. I'll have to have you back and do another time.